After a life in one of the world's best-known comedy troupes, he became a globe-trotting travel documentarian and advocate for geographic knowledge. His newest series, Brazil, with Michael Palin, is set to debut on TVO this Sunday, June 30th at 9 p.m. And with that, we welcome Michael Palin to TVO. It's great to meet you.
Well, great to meet you. Thanks. Nice to be here.
It's Paikin and Palin.
Yeah, I know. There must be some link somewhere.
Probably not.
Some dysfunctional thing on the computer. You'd probably get my parking ticket.
You've been here before, Toronto?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Lots of times?
Well, the first time I came was 1973 with the Pythons, did a rather ill-fated tour of Canada, in which we lost a lot of money.
We didn't get your humor at that point?
No,
we sure
you
do
got
now.
the humor. No,
Oh.
no, absolutely not. It was because in 1969, the Canadians were the first people to take Monty Python flying circus, apart from the Pakistanis who took it because they honestly thought it was a circus. But the Canadians knew what it was, enjoyed it. It was taken off by CBC. People marched in sub-zero temperatures to say, bring back Python. So we thought, this is the country we've got to go to soon.
And did it work? Did they bring it back?
Yeah, no, they brought it back.
They brought it back.
They brought it back, and we returned, and we did some very good gigs in Toronto and some in Montreal. But it was when we went out west, our manager didn't have a great grasp of the geography of the country. I think he thought it was about the size of the Isle of Wight, you know, and we get from Edmonton to Vancouver in one afternoon, you know, by bus. But
no,
anyway,
not quite.
But the response was very good, apart from, I have to say, Saskatoon, which cancelled owing to lack of interest.
Shocking. Well, try again. I'm sure it'll be sold out this time. Well, you're hitting up another big country, aren't you? Canada's pretty big, but Brazil's pretty big too. And
yeah, Brazil is indeed.
Why Brazil?
Because it's big. Well, part of the reason. No, I mean, because it is the fifth biggest country in the world, and I can't believe I'd been all around South America and kind of missed out Brazil. So I felt I should go and see this amazing country and find out whether the reality is like the fantasy, you know, the sun, sea, samba, all that sort of thing. And also because I thought it would be relevant, the World Soccer Cup coming in 2014,
right.
in 2016,
the
Olympics, and generally some burgeoning economy makes it one of the BRIC countries and all that. Mm-hmm. So it seemed Brazil's time had come, and it was time for me to go and have a look and see what it was like.
How's your Portuguese?
Not so good. I can't even remember what not so good is in Portuguese. But I can pronounce it well, but I don't know the words, unfortunately.
The country lately, you know, it had this explosive growth for a very long time, but lately the numbers are certainly not what they once were, and I guess there's some concern they're coming on hard times right now. Did you see evidence of that when you were there?
Well, a lot of people I talked to said actually this image of the golden economy does not match what's happening on the ground.
Right.
I met a couple in Rio. Young, sort of, he was a designer, she was a teacher, and they couldn't really, you know, very hard pressed to live anywhere near the middle of Rio, because they said everybody's buying up the places. A lot of foreigners are buying up these apartments for the ahead of the Olympics and all that. And just because our economy is booming, doesn't mean that prices aren't going up, and they were going up. And now, of course, the economy, as you say, has really slowed down, and there's quite a worry there, because the infrastructure of Brazil is not great. You know, they haven't got great roads, no rail. You know, if they want to be ready for the Olympics, they've got to spend a lot of money.
First episode, I think, is called Out of Africa in your Brazil series. What is the African influence that you saw there?
The northeast coast is almost entirely settled by slaves, really, who were brought out in huge numbers, because when the Portuguese, I think 1500, the Portuguese first set foot in Brazil, and there was enormous plantations, coffee plantations, cotton, sugar, whatever, and they didn't have enough people to work it, so they imported slaves on a huge scale. I mean, many more slaves went to Brazil than any other part of the Americas. And so their descendants are there, and so the northeast coast is really very African in the food, in the dress, in the religion. There's a lot of kind of animist religion, a lot of you know, wonderful sort of African music there as well. So it's very, very much an African part of the country. That
You look
coast.
pretty good on the drums there.
I do, right? Yeah.
Still haven't quite got the throw figured out.
I didn't get the throw. No, I did the Ringo throw twice. No, was it? No, the Keith Moon throw.
The Keith Moon throw. That's it.
I did it once, and then it worked, and the second time it didn't. I should have learned that lesson.
I'm sure you've been asked this before, so forgive me if it's. But I don't know the answer, so I want to ask you. It seems an odd stretch or an odd transition from going to the kind of work you did with Monty Python to the kind of work you're doing now, traveling around the world and making documentaries. How has that transition, I mean, how have you negotiated that?
Well, I was always a curious child. I wanted to travel abroad. I was brought up in a part of the world, Sheffield in Yorkshire, after the war, where there was just no chance to travel and there was no cheap flights. I just was resigned to living in South Yorkshire for the rest of my life. So in 1987, leaping ahead, when the BBC approached me, on the basis I'd done one documentary about railways back in 1980, they said, you do serious documentaries, well, we've got a really serious one for you. We want you to be Phileas Fogg, go around the world, camera's going to be following you, make it up as you go along, but you've got to do it in under 80 days. And I said, yes, you know, and they said, oh, you're great, you're just the person to do it. It was only when I was halfway around the world that the director, after a few beers, admitted I was the fifth person they'd asked to do it.
Now, why were they reluctant to hire you in the first place?
I don't know, well, you know, it was a serious venture, and I was a exceedingly silly person doing comedy and all that. However, you know, I said I'd do it. I just finished filming A Fish Called Wanda. There was nothing else on the horizon. And I thought, well, go and see the world. The BBC will pay. Let's go for it. And we developed a kind of technique when we filmed, which was very successful, which is actually a guy who makes mistakes but is not you know, is unembarrassed by that. Someone being natural as they travel, someone who's no expert but is like an everyman, a common man doing the travelling. And this, which I didn't think was a great revelation, but it seemed to be what the audiences wanted. We got very big audience figures. I mean, very big, 12 million, I think, for the first, for the last episode of our first series. And after that, I thought, well, I do love seeing the world. Maybe let's try something else that Jules Verne hasn't written. So Pole to Pole was our second attempt. That was equally successful.
You've been to both poles. How many people in this world can say they've been to both poles?
Yeah. Even David Attenborough, the great guru, my hero, has not been to both.
Has not been to both.
No, I never cease to remind him of that. Oh, just one pole, David? Just one pole? Yeah, I don't think he's been to either, actually. And this may be, sorry, David, if you're watching, but certainly, no, it's very rare to go to both.
You're here to get a really quite significant honor, if I may say. Let's tell everybody about this. The Royal Canadian Geographical Society's Gold Medal for your contribution to geographic literacy. What got you into geographic literacy in the first place?
Well, I'm not entirely sure what geographic literacy is, but this is on the citation for the award, I think. I just felt, as a result of all my travels, I was asked to be president of the Royal Geographical Society in England, which was quite an honour. And I thought, well, I've got to think carefully about geography. What do I feel about it? And I do think it's very, very important for people to understand where things are in the world, how to get around the world, not just virtually, but actually to travel and to see for themselves. Because I think the more contact we have with other people, other nations, the more we realise that, you know, that we are far more alike than we are different. And this, to me, makes for a safer world. So understanding the world and why we are different does not necessarily mean to say you're increasing hostility. Quite the opposite. I think it's actually a very good way of learning tolerance.
You went to a grade 7 class in Ottawa?
Yes.
How did that go?
Yeah, they were terrific, actually. Great,
well,
great
kids are terrific, but my fear is they didn't know as much as you think they ought to have known. Is that true?
No, I think that's unfair on the kids. I didn't know what they didn't know. Okay. I just assumed that they would like to know what I knew. And that was all I wanted, was to get a good reaction out of them. And I showed them some slides, a little PowerPoint. And there were some of the places I've been looked pretty spectacular. I mean, K2, the second highest mountain in the world, the most dangerous and difficult mountain of all to climb, seen from a glacier. You know, it's just amazing. You get very excited. And they got excited at seeing all the various people, and people in Africa traveling on top of the train, not inside it, because there was no room inside, and me joining them. They liked all that. And they asked some very acute questions at the end, you know, for sort of kids coming to the end of a hard term, 12 and 13-year-olds. They were really engaged.
If they're 12 and 13, though, do they have any idea who you are?
I don't think they did, no. But whenever Python was mentioned, there was a sort of roar from the teacher's bench over to one side. Oh, yay! So I asked for questions, serious questions about the world. And one teacher says, could you show us your silly walk? So I ended up...
Which you've never been asked before, I'm sure.
Well, my silly walk, of course, is not, as any Python aficionado aficionado knows is not the exciting one. John Cleese's was the good one. I had the bad one, which I was trying to get government support to improve. However, I did that, and the kids loved that.
One of the things that, in fact, we've talked about on this program before, there was a study done, I think, at Memorial University in Newfoundland. They made headlines because one of the professors there did a pop quiz with her students to test their knowledge of geography.
Yeah.
She hands out a blank map, and she has a simple question. Put Europe, Asia, North America, South America, Africa on the map. And 3/4 of the students typically fail that test. These are university students in Canada.
Yeah.
Does that surprise you?
Well, I don't know if it surprises me. It makes me very, very sad. I just can't believe that. But then I was brought up on maps. I love maps, and I just knew, I looked at the globe all the time. Maybe it's just nowadays people have more options. When I was stuck in Sheffield, I wanted to know about the world. I just had to look at, I had a great atlas at home. I just loved looking at this atlas. So I knew the outlines of all these countries. But maybe that's just because I enjoy geography. I'm not saying everyone should, but to know where the continents are and where London is vis-a-vis Washington or Ottawa, I mean, that seems absolutely basic. And it does sound quite sad that people of that age and that kind of education don't know the basics of literacy.
I hate to make you feel worse. They also asked them, what is the ocean right next to our province? And half of them couldn't tell you it was the Atlantic.
No.
That's...
Is it?
Tis.
You got me there.
Same one your country's on.
I thought it was the English Channel. That's all over the world, isn't it?
No. Do you have a sort of a checklist of, to be geographically literate, you have to at least know A, B, C, D? Do you have that kind of a list?
Well, I don't, but I would think basically the shape of the world, the main mountain ranges, the Himalaya, the Andes, and the shape of the continents, the size of the seas, they fit quite neatly into place. And I think, that's a sort of basic, and know your Arctic from your Antarctic. It's not difficult once you start filling them in. You just do them as triangles. You don't have to do all the coastline. But I think people should know the shape of the continents and where they all fit.
I'm with you on this. But then there are probably some, 15 to 20-year-olds nowadays who say, I don't need to know any of this, and what I don't know I can find in Google in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
What do we say to that?
Well, you're not going to have your Google, you're not going to have your iPad with you all the time, Go out there, walk the place for yourself, see, smell it. You're not going to get any of the kind of interaction that you get from traveling. Unless you go there. You can't physically feel what it's like going uphill from just looking at a Google map. And also, I think Google Maps, Google Earth is a fantastic thing for finding. It's a tool, but it is not the whole answer to it at all. I think look less at screens, get out there and look at the real mountains, and swim in the real lakes, and eat food that's growing there, and wear the costumes, do the dances, whatever. You can't do that on Google.
As you think about this generation of young people, if they get increasingly turned off from geography, or they don't have the geographic literacy that you think they ought to have, take us 10, 20 years down the road. What do you think the consequences of that are?
I think consequences are possibly that people can be much more easily manipulated if you don't know the difference between the countries. If you think there's just all the countries are the same as the big companies of the world, then I think you're going to lose a feeling of identity and what's special. And I think that would be a great shame, because I do think history and geography do very important things. They both tell us about the past, inform us about the present, and hopefully prepare us for the future. And I think just not knowing the history, not knowing the background, just being able to switch on every now and then, you lose contact with what it's all about, I think.
Do you think in your home country students appear to be more with it, more literate on geography than, say, in other places in the world? You've had to know your neighbors for the last several centuries, right?
Yeah. Well, the British travel a lot, but so do the Canadians. I'm all over the world. If you're from Canada, you're a trusted traveller. Non-aligned and all that sort of thing. I've met many Canadians as I've travelled. But I do know that despite the ratings we got for our series, which is occasionally just amazed me, a country like Mauritania, we crossed west of Africa. I don't even know where it is till we went there. We got 5 or 6 million people watching. But I think probably of that, about sort of 4.5 million were people who never want to travel, just want to see somebody being really uncomfortable and getting through it. They see it as an adventure. And in a sense, geography is about adventure. But I do think there are a lot of people who just aren't as interested as I am, and they just never will be. But you've got to know, otherwise, what does what's happening in Syria mean to you, what's happening in the Arab Spring, what's happening in India or Pakistan? Unless you know where those countries are and the kind of people who live there, then you're going to have no opinion, and someone's going to give you their opinion, and you're going to have to accept it. And suddenly you'll think, hey, gosh, I never knew that. And we don't want to be dumb, especially in world affairs.
Mm-hmm. Did I read this right? Did your last birthday, which was last month, put you into a decade which now starts with a 7?
A new decade, yes, I am 7,000 years old.
That's not what I meant.
Yeah, no, I'm 70. Yeah,
you're 70
right.
now.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Great. I mean, it's much better. It's much better being 70 than being 69, and you worry about 70. Oh my God, it all lies ahead. Then you get to 70, and you wake up in the morning, and you're 70, and actually both legs work. You can walk down the stairs. You can still make yourself a cup of coffee. You can work the toaster. Hey, I'm still alive at 70.
But when you were a kid, 70 was really old.
It was very old.
Yeah.
No, I'm guilty when I was my 20s of calling people who were 40 old people. So it's just a relative matter. And now I feel fine. I don't really have to justify anything. I've got to 70, and now my family can look after me. Thank you very much.
How far into life did your folks make it?
My dad was 77 and my mother was 86.
Oh.
But we're all told we're going to live to, into our 90s now. Governments are in terrible state with pensions and sort of free bus passes and all that.
Well, I'm thinking if you're going to be into your 90s, you're going to have to come up with maybe 3 or 4 or 5 more of these documentary travel series. So where do you want to go after Brazil?
Well, I want to do, great swimming pools of the world. That's always been a good one. Gin and tonics of the Southeast Asia. That's good. Yeah. Medical treatment in Tahiti. I don't know, all sorts of things. Massage in the Pacific. There are lots of opportunities for old guys to do travel.
I hear Saskatoon's really good.
Yeah. Revenge. We'll go to Saskatoon whether they like it or not. Pythons will set up there and force them to watch it.
Now, I don't normally ask silly questions, but you're a very funny guy, so I think I'm entitled to ask one silly question, okay? Hopefully the previous ones have not been. Have you ever met Sarah Palin?
Well, it's not that silly.
Okay.
Maybe in another life, but not in this life.
Not in this life.
I absolutely have not, no. She's probably gone up to her sort of upper room and probably could see me from her house in Alaska when I was climbing in the Pennines, but no, we've not actually ever sat down and had a drink.
That's the interview I want to do next. Palin and Palin.
Palin and Palin?
And
well,
Paikin.
Yeah.
It's a great pleasure to meet you, and I thank you so much for spending some time with us here at TVO, and we wish you tons of luck with the new documentaries, 4-part series on Brazil.
Thanks so much.
Michael Palin.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.